My name is Elle, and let me tell you a story, my story. When I was 16, my parents drove me deep into the woods and handed me a map. Let's see if she can read it properly, my father said. Then they left. They told themselves it was a lesson, a test of survival. But the truth? They wanted to see how long it would take before I broke. I never went back. But 20 years later, they found me. Not because they missed me, not because they regretted what they did. They found me because they wanted something. And when I refused, they didn't stop at guilt. They didn't stop at manipulation. They tried to destroy me. What do you do when the people who raised you are the ones trying to ruin you? And more importantly, how do you fight back? The words on the screen felt like a slap. How a wealthy lawyer abandoned her parents to die. I could feel the blood drain from my face. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, louder than the hum of my office AC, louder than the muffled sounds of the city outside my window. The article was already trending. Thousands of shares. Comments piling up. People I'd never met condemning me, calling me heartless, selfish, a disgrace to my family. How can someone do this to their own parents? No amount of money can replace a child's duty. She should be ashamed. If my daughter ever did this to me, I'd rather be dead. I scrolled down, my hands trembling. There were even screenshots from old family photos, grainy and overexposed, dug up from my mother's social media. Captions painted a twisted narrative. She was such a sweet girl, until she forgot where she came from. I exhaled shakily, pressing my fingertips against my temple. This wasn't just a post. This was a calculated attack. And it wasn't just words. My parents had always known how to play the long game, how to pull at the right strings, how to make the world see them as the victims. My phone vibrated. A message from Fiona, my assistant. Fiona, we have a problem. The board wants to meet. The article is spreading. I swiped away the notification, forcing down the lump in my throat. They weren't just coming for my name. They were coming for my career. I stood, pacing to the window. Houston stretched out beneath me, glass towers gleaming under the late afternoon sun. It had taken me 2 decades to get here. Years of clawing my way up, of working twice as hard as everyone else, of proving over and over again that I was worth something. And now, with one post, they were trying to tear it all down. I grabbed my phone and did the one thing I swore I'd never do again. I called my mother. The phone barely rang before she picked up. "Oh, sweetheart!" Maris's voice was syrupy sweet, dripping with artificial warmth. "We were wondering when you'd call. You know, your father and I have been worried sick." I clenched my jaw. "Take it down." She let out a soft, pitiful sigh. "Take what down, darling?" "You know what?" My grip tightened around my phone. "The post, the article, all of it." A pause. Then, a quiet hum. "Oh, Elle, you know, if you'd just called us sooner, none of this would have been necessary." My stomach twisted. Necessary? Another pause. This time, the silence stretched. Then, a deeper voice cut in. My father. "You think you can just erase us?" Luther's voice was rough, edged with something cold and familiar. "You think we'd sit here and take it while you pretend we never existed?" "You disappeared for 20 years, I snapped. "You left me." "We raised you." His voice hardened. "We gave you everything. And now, when we need help, you turn your back on us?" I let out a humorless laugh. "You abandoned me at 16, and now you think you can guilt me into paying your bills?" "You watch your mouth," he growled. "Or what?" I shot back. "You'll lie some more? You'll destroy everything I built?" "Elle, sweetheart," Maris cooed, her voice dipping into something softer, more manipulative. "This doesn't have to be ugly. We just need a little help, a little generosity." I knew that tone. It was the same voice she used when she wanted something, when she convinced people to give her the benefit of the doubt, when she twisted reality just enough to make herself look like the victim. "You mean money," I said flatly. A beat of silence. Then, my father's voice, sharp as a knife. "You owe us, Eleanor." A cold fury coiled in my chest. I let out a slow breath, pressing my free hand against my desk to steady myself. I don't owe you a goddamn thing. Maris let out a small, wounded noise. Oh, honey, you don't mean that. I do, I swallowed, forcing steel into my voice. Take it down, or I'll make you wish you had. A long silence. Then, a quiet chuckle. Luther. You think you're untouchable, he murmured. We'll see about that. The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, my fingers still gripping it tightly. They weren't backing down, and I knew exactly what that meant. This was only the beginning. The storm that had once soaked my 16-year-old self in the forest was nothing compared to the one about to hit me now. I stared at my phone, gripping it so tightly, my knuckles turned white. The article wasn't just spreading, it was exploding. Thousands of shares, trending hashtags, influencers picking up the story, turning it into the scandal of the week. How does someone become this heartless? She has millions, and she can't spare a dime for her dying parents? She deserves to lose everything. A notification flashed across my screen. Fiona. L. We just lost a client. They don't want the bad press. I sucked in a sharp breath. This was happening too fast. My office door burst open, and Fiona stormed in, phone clutched in her hand, eyes wide with panic. It's worse than we thought, she said, her voice tight. Your parents? What now? They're calling your board members. I felt my stomach drop. They're telling them you financially exploited them, Fiona continued, that you cut them off after they paid for your entire education. Some of the board members are concerned. Concerned. That was corporate speak for getting ready to cut ties. Before I could respond, my desk phone rang. Thomas Caldwell, my boss. The only reason he'd be calling was if this had already reached the highest level. I exhaled slowly, then answered. L, Thomas said without preamble. I need you in the conference room, now. The line went dead. Fiona gave me a look. They're going to grill you. I grabbed my blazer off the chair, squared my shoulders, and headed out the door. The conference room was full. Every senior executive in the firm sat around the long table, some flipping through printouts of that damn article. Thomas stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, but I could see the weight of the situation in his eyes. Elle, take a seat. I did. We've been contacted by multiple clients expressing concern, he said, and now your parents are reaching out directly. They claim you've been neglecting them for years. I forced myself to remain calm. That's a lie. Thomas slid a folder across the table. They provided bank statements showing they transferred money to you for years. I opened the folder and my stomach clenched. It was doctored. The transactions were real, but they were from my childhood. They had twisted old financial support, groceries, medical bills, things they were legally required to provide for me, into something that made it look like I had been dependent on them long into adulthood. This is manipulation, I said, my voice cold. Thomas studied me. Can you prove that? I hesitated. He sighed. Elle, I need to be blunt. We're a firm built on reputation. We need to know, do we have a crisis on our hands? I clenched my jaw. This is personal. They're weaponizing the media against me because I refuse to give them money. A long silence stretched across the room. Some executives exchanged glances. Look, Thomas said finally, his tone careful. No one is saying you're guilty of anything, but perception is reality in our industry. Clients don't like scandals. We need a plan. The room blurred around me. This was exactly what my parents wanted. They didn't care about the truth. They cared about control. They wanted to drag me down until I had no choice but to give them what they wanted. I pushed my chair back. I'll handle it. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Handle it how? I stood. I'm going on the offensive. As I stepped out of the boardroom, my phone buzzed again. A news anchor was requesting an on-air interview with my parents. I thought I had seen the worst of their cruelty. I was wrong. My phone screen cast a harsh glow in the dimly lit office, the video still playing, even though I had stopped listening. The words had already sunk in, carved deep like old wounds ripped open. Odessa sat between our parents, her expression carefully sculpted. Just enough pain, just enough hesitation to make her performance believable. She was always different. Distant, uncaring. Our parents gave her everything, and she threw them away. My stomach twisted. Odessa had always been the golden child, the peacemaker, the one who smoothed over our parents' cruelty with soft words and empty reassurances. I had thought, maybe, just maybe, she had grown past that she had seen them for what they were. But I had been wrong. I rewound the clip, this time listening with cold detachment. She was never like the rest of us, always keeping secrets, always looking for a way out. I tried to help her, but Odessa lowered her gaze, voice breaking just slightly for dramatic effect. She didn't want a family. The interview host nodded solemnly, leaning in as if to console her. And when was the last time she reached out to you? Odessa sighed. Years ago, she cut all ties, no explanation. Lies. Every damn word was a lie. My fingers clenched around my phone as the host turned back to my mother, who was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She was such a sweet girl, Maris whispered. But success changed her, and now she wants to forget where she came from. Luther added his part with a bitter shake of his head. She'll regret this one day. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just a smear campaign anymore. They were rewriting my entire life. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of my office. Odessa's workplace was a sleek, glass-walled corporate building on the west side of Houston. I bypassed the receptionist's attempts to stop me and strode straight into her office, slamming the door shut behind me. She barely looked up from her desk. I figured you'd show up. You don't get to play the victim, I spat. Not after what you just did. She leaned back in her chair, exhaling heavily. No. I cut her off, stepping closer. You stood there and lied. You twisted our entire childhood into something that fit their narrative. For what, Odessa? So they wouldn't turn on you next? She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, a flicker of something almost like regret flashing across her face before it disappeared. It's not that simple. It is, I shot back. You made your choice. She stood, folding her arms. What was I supposed to do? Let them rot? They deserve to rot, I nearly shouted, my voice cracking. After everything they did, after they abandoned me, and you stood there and let them rewrite history. Odessa's jaw tightened. You could have stopped all of this. You could have just given them the money. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. So that's what this is about? A payday? She flinched. They're our parents. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Not mine, not anymore. Something flickered in her eyes. Anger, maybe, or shame. You always make yourself the victim, Elle. I stared at her. And you always make yourself the coward. Silence stretched between us. Then, slowly, I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolled to her name, and pressed block. I wouldn't make the mistake of trusting her again. If my own sister could turn against me, then what was coming next would be worse. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. The medical report was crisp, official-looking. If I didn't know better, even I might have believed it. My parents had fabricated everything, a perfectly crafted lie. The report claimed my father was suffering from late-stage heart disease, my mother from a degenerative neurological disorder. Both were supposedly too ill to work, dependent on the kindness of strangers to survive. And of course, the daughter who abandoned them. A fresh wave of outrage flooded social media. More headlines, more accusations. How can she sleep at night, knowing her own parents are dying? Millions in the bank, but not a dime for the people who raised her. Eleanor Holloway should be ashamed. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to focus. A knock on my office door snapped me back. Fiona stepped inside, her face pale. She didn't even have to say it. They filed the lawsuit, I said flatly. She nodded, holding out a thick envelope. Courier just dropped it off. It's bad, Elle. I took the documents with stiff fingers, flipping through the pages. The words blurred together, but a few stood out. Luther and Maurice Holloway v. Eleanor Holloway. Claim, neglect, and financial abandonment under Texas filial responsibility laws. I let out a slow breath through my nose. They actually did it. Fiona hesitated. David's waiting in the conference room. He said you should see this first. I glanced at her. See what? She bit her lip and slid another folder onto my desk, a list of every major client I represented. And beside each name, contact records. My parents had called them all. A sharp, cold rage settled in my chest. I grabbed the lawsuit and marched toward the conference room. David McAllister sat at the far end of the table, flipping through the documents, his expression unreadable. When I walked in, he didn't even look up. They don't have a strong case, he said, but they don't need one. I dropped into the seat across from him. Because this isn't about winning. He finally met my gaze. Exactly. They just want to make your life hell. I exhaled sharply. How long could this drag out? David leaned back, rubbing his temple. Months, maybe a year, depending on how aggressively they push it. And if they keep feeding the media, public pressure could backfire on your firm. I clenched my jaw. So what's our move? David sighed. The safest option? Settle. No. He arched a brow. Elle? No, I repeated, my voice like steel. I am not paying them off. A flicker of something almost like respect crossed his face. Then we fight. I leaned forward. Let's go on the offensive. Hours later, my statement hit the internet. Families don't sue their children out of love. It was short, controlled, but the reaction was immediate. Some people saw through the act, others doubled down on the outrage. But one thing was clear. I wasn't staying silent. Then, just as I thought I could breathe, a new headline surfaced. Medical documents reveal Eleanor Holloway's parents are terminally ill, and she still refuses to help. I stared at the report on my screen, knowing this just got a lot worse. They weren't just coming after my money. They were coming after my reputation, my life, everything. I scrolled through the medical report again, my fingers gripping the edge of my desk. Every word was a lie. Every diagnosis, every fabricated symptom, crafted to paint me as a monster. A fresh wave of rage burned through me. The media had swallowed it whole. News anchors discussed my supposed cruelty with the same feigned concern they reserved for celebrity scandals. Articles painted my parents as frail, helpless victims, and I was the heartless daughter who had abandoned them. I clenched my jaw as my phone buzzed. David. I answered without hesitation. Tell me you have good news. His sigh was heavy. It's fake, but proving it will take time. They used a real doctor's credentials, someone who died 3 years ago. The hospital already confirmed they never treated your parents, but getting that into the public record won't be simple. I gritted my teeth. So, what are our options? Option 1. Wait it out, let them keep spinning the story while we build a case, David said. Option 2. File an immediate legal notice against every news outlet that ran the report. Do it, I said without hesitation. All of them. David paused. Elle, once we do this, there's no turning back. This isn't just about clearing your name, it's war. I tightened my grip on the phone. It already was. I dialed Odessa. She picked up on the second ring. Elle, she said, her voice tight. I was going to call you. Did you know about this? I snapped. A pause. Then a sigh. They told me they were struggling. I didn't ask questions. You didn't ask questions? My voice rose. They faked medical records, Odessa. Do you even understand how serious this is? Another pause. Then, quietly, you could just settle, you know? A bitter laugh escaped me. So that's your answer? Let them get away with it? You could make this all go away, she insisted. It's just money, Elle. You have plenty. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that they will never stop. You know that. Silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer. Maybe your version isn't the truth. I felt the final thread snap. Goodbye, Odessa. I hung up. 16 years ago, I stood outside the kitchen, listening. She's too soft, my father muttered. She needs to learn, Maris replied, or the world will eat her alive. I clenched my fists. I had hoped that I had misread them, that this was a mistake, that they didn't actually mean to abandon me. But the way they talked about me, like I was some kind of failed experiment, they enjoyed watching me struggle. I wasn't their daughter, I was their entertainment. I stared at my reflection in the office window, the city lights flickering behind me. I had spent years pretending they were ghosts of my past. But ghosts didn't sue you. Ghosts didn't rewrite history. I grabbed my phone and drafted the statement. Families don't sue their children out of love. I hit send. And just like that, the first shot had been fired. If they wouldn't stop, then neither would I. I had spent years letting them control the narrative, years pretending their absence didn't matter, that the scars they left weren't still raw beneath the surface. But this was different. This was an all-out attack. And I was done playing defense. I paced my office, my fingers clenched around my phone. David had been clear. Be careful, Elle. If you push too hard, they might retaliate. I had laughed then. Retaliate? I had repeated. What else can they do? Now, staring at the endless stream of headlines, I realized just how much worse it could get. Eleanor Holloway faces backlash after cold statement to ailing parents. We raised her, now she treats us like strangers. Daughter disowns family, but why? Comment sections burned with judgment. Strangers dissected my life as if they knew me, as if they had the right. She's disgusting. Money really does change people. She could fix all of this with one check. How heartless do you have to be? If my child abandoned me like that, I'd rather be dead. I forced my breathing to steady. This was what they wanted. To break me down. A sharp knock on my door made me jolt. Fiona poked her head in, her face pale. Ella, she whispered. They're downstairs. My stomach turned. Who? She swallowed. Your parents? With reporters? For a second, I didn't move. Then, without another word, I grabbed my blazer and stormed toward the elevators. The moment I stepped outside, the flash of cameras blinded me. Reporters shouted over each other. Eleanor, do you have anything to say? How do you feel about your parents' health crisis? Is it true you've refused to speak to them? I ignored them, my eyes locking on the real spectacle. My mother, standing near the curb, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. My father beside her, his mouth set in a grim line. They looked exactly like what they wanted the world to see, the poor, abandoned parents of a selfish daughter. I clenched my jaw and stepped forward. What the hell do you think you're doing? Maris gasped theatrically. Elle, darling, she said, her voice trembling just enough to sound believable. We just wanted to see you. Here? I hissed. With them? I gestured at the cameras. She shook her head. We had no choice. You won't answer our calls. You've shut us out. You sued me, I snapped. You made up medical records, and now you're showing up at my office, harassing my employees? Luther chuckled under his breath, the sound sharp and bitter. You always did have a flair for dramatics. I turned on him. Get out of my way, or I'll have security remove you. A murmur rippled through the reporters. Not the response they expected. Elle, my mother whimpered, reaching for me. Please don't do this. We're family. I stepped back. No, we're not. Gasps, flashbulbs. Maris's face crumpled. How can you say that? You want money? Sue me, I said, my voice cold. You want pity? Find someone else. I turned, nodding toward the security team standing at the entrance. Escort them out. My mother let out a choked sob. Luther sneered. And as the cameras kept rolling, I didn't flinch. I walked back to my office, heart pounding, knowing this fight was far from over. I had just declared war. Now I had to win it. I was ready for retaliation, but I wasn't ready for this. The notification popped up on my phone while I was reviewing case files. My stomach clenched as I saw the words trending across social media. Eleanor Holloway stole from her own parents. Here's the proof. I clicked on the post, my hands shaking. Screenshots, doctored emails, a forged bank statement showing a large sum of money transferred from my parents' account to mine. It was fake, but to the internet, it looked real enough. And then I saw the worst part. Odessa had helped them. There was a statement, her statement, confirming it all. I never wanted to believe it, but my parents showed me the documents. Elle took from them. I don't know why she's acting like the victim. The betrayal burned through my veins. Odessa knew the truth. She knew I had never taken a cent from them. And yet, here she was, twisting the knife deeper. I slammed my laptop shut and grabbed my phone, dialing David. He picked up immediately. Elle? They fabricated evidence. My voice shook with rage. And Odessa backed them up. A pause, then a low curse. They just escalated, hard. Then we escalate harder, I snapped. We need to go on the offensive, now. 16 years ago, I wasn't supposed to hear them. I had woken up early, the house still quiet, and padded down the hall, only to freeze when I heard my parents talking in the kitchen. She needs to toughen up, Luther was saying. This world will eat her alive if she stays this week. She's fine, Maris replied lazily. She survived, didn't she? Luther let out a chuckle. Barely. She was crying when she came back, like some pathetic little thing. But she'll learn. This is good for her. Maybe next time we push her a little further. I gripped the wall, my breath catching in my throat. They had done it on purpose. I had spent the entire night terrified in the woods, believing, hoping, that it was a mistake. That they would come back. That they would realize they had pushed me too far. But they never had. And now I knew why. They had enjoyed it. I turned and walked away, something breaking inside me. I never looked at them the same way again. Present day, David called me back an hour later. We have something, he said. I gripped my phone. What? A witness. Someone from your past who can expose them. My heart pounded. Who? David hesitated, then said a name I hadn't heard in years. Elle, you're not going to believe this. It's your old teacher, the one who tried to help you. I swallowed hard. Hope flickered in my chest, but I knew my parents wouldn't go down without a fight. If they thought I was done fighting, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I stepped out of the car, the courthouse looming ahead, its stone facade cold and unmoving, a perfect reflection of what I had become. Cameras flashed like 1,000 tiny explosions, the air thick with the shouts of reporters, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of demand and speculation. Eleanor, do you have anything to say to your parents? Are you really abandoning them while they're sick? How do you feel about today's trial? I didn't flinch. For years, I had been silent, playing their game, following their rules, letting their narratives shape the truth. But today? Today was different. Today, I was done being their victim. David was already at the courthouse steps, his stance casual, but his eyes locked onto mine, sharp as a blade. He didn't need to speak loudly for me to hear him over the noise. Stay steady, he murmured. They're going to play this like it's their last act. I nodded. Let them. I was ready. Inside, the air was thick with tension. My parents sat across the courtroom, their performance already in motion. Maris was draped in a thick wool blanket, her frail hands trembling in her lap. Her lips quivered, her entire body curling inward as though the weight of the world rested on her delicate shoulders. Luther sat beside her, his spine stiff, his jaw locked in the perfect portrait of a grieving, betrayed husband. Pathetic. I kept my face blank as I took my seat, refusing to give them the satisfaction of a reaction. The judge called the court to order, and the battle began. I had waited for them to explain. For days, I had tried to get answers. I had begged, pleaded, demanded. Why did you leave me? Why did you think that was okay? Why wasn't I enough? but they never gave me what I wanted. What I needed. Not once. The last time I asked, my father only smirked, his dark eyes filled with something cold, something amused. You survived, didn't you? That's all that matters. My mother didn't even bother looking up from her book. Her voice was as indifferent as ever. You should be thanking us. That was the moment I knew. They were never going to change, and I had to stop waiting for them to. David stood, his voice measured, his arguments razor-sharp as he presented the evidence. Years of fraudulent financial records, fabricated medical claims, false testimonies built on a house of cards, all of it laid bare for the world to see. A hushed murmur spread through the room, reporters scribbling furiously, cameras clicking in rapid succession. My parents' lawyer attempted to interject, but David was relentless. He cut through every weak rebuttal, every attempt to redirect the conversation. Then the witness stepped forward. The room fell silent. I stiffened. Elle, you're not going to believe this, David had told me the night before. It's your old teacher, the one who tried to help you. And now, here she was. Time had aged her, but her eyes still held the same warmth, the same quiet defiance I remembered from when I was a child. She met my parents' gaze with unflinching disgust before turning her attention to the judge. I reported them years ago, she said, her voice steady. I was ignored, but I never forgot. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Luther's face turned red, his hands clenching into fists. Maris clutched the arms of her wheelchair as though the force of her grip could somehow keep her world from collapsing. It was too late for that. The verdict. When the ruling came, I barely heard the words. The lawsuit was dismissed. My parents were exposed as frauds. I had won. The weight of victory settled over me like an iron cloak, heavier than I had imagined. I should have felt relief, or triumph, or something. But as I watched them being led out of the courtroom, all I felt was nothing. No vindication, no satisfaction, just an empty space where something should have been. I stepped out of the courthouse, inhaling deeply, the cool air burning my lungs. The world outside felt different, brighter somehow, lighter. Maybe that was enough. For the first time in my life, I was free. But what came next was entirely up to me. I stood outside the courthouse, the weight of the past pressing against me. But for once, it wasn't crushing. It was simply there, lingering, but no longer defining me. The reporters were still shouting, their voices blending into meaningless noise. Elle, do you have anything to say to your parents? Now that the trial is over, will you reconcile? What's next for Eleanor Holloway? I ignored them. David caught up to me, matching my stride as I stepped away from the chaos. It's over, Elle. You won. I nodded, but the word won felt hollow. This wasn't victory. Not in the way they thought. Winning would have meant having a family that actually loved me. Winning would have meant never needing this trial at all. But I had won something else. I had won my freedom. That night, I sat in my apartment, the city lights flickering outside my window. My phone buzzed. Odessa. I stared at the message for a long time. They have nothing left, Elle. Maybe that's enough. Enough? After everything? I exhaled slowly. Maybe Odessa wasn't trying to manipulate me this time. Maybe, in her own broken way, she was just trying to make sense of it all, just like I was. But it didn't matter. I pressed delete and set my phone down. For the first time, I felt no guilt, no obligation, just silence and peace. 16 years ago, I packed my bag in silence. My parents didn't ask me what I was doing. They didn't care. I paused at the door, looking back one last time. Luther barely glanced up from his newspaper. Maris took a sip of her wine, unconcerned. I waited, just for a second. For something. Anything. A reason to stay. But none came. So I stepped out, never looking back. And I never would again. I picked up my phone, dialed Fiona. Let's book that trip, I said, She laughed. Where to? Anywhere but here. For the first time in years, I was thinking about myself. I was finally free. Elle stepped out into the sunlight, leaving her past behind. Before we end this story, I want to leave you with something to think about. For years, I carried the weight of a past I never asked for. I let guilt, obligation, and the fear of being seen as ungrateful dictate my choices. But here's what I've learned. Family isn't about blood. It's about who truly stands by you. Sometimes the people who should love us the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And when that happens, you have two choices. Let it define you or let it go. Walking away doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's survival. And choosing yourself after years of being told you don't matter? That's liberation. So if you've ever been made to feel guilty for choosing peace over toxicity, let me tell you this. You don't owe anyone your suffering just because they share your DNA. You deserve to be free. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic relationship, family or otherwise? How did it change you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you, or let me know where you're watching from. And if you didn't like this video, tell me why. I appreciate all perspectives. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to share more with you soon. Until next time, choose yourself always.